Boston Celtics in this era have pretty much been a perennial playoff team, and in some cases, they've been legit finals contenders. Last season, they were slightly worse than normal as they weren't as good as they are accustomed to being. They finished at 500, going 36-36, with a first-round exit to the Brooklyn Nets. Brad Stevens and Kemba Walker were mostly to blame for the struggles for last season, and both of those guys are now gone. The Celtics made a quick turnaround, currently sitting at 51-31, which is good for second in this suddenly very tough Eastern Conference. This season, they've hung their hats on the defensive end, with Ime Udoka orchestrating it all. Led by the dynamic duo of Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, the Celtics are in the thick of things to potentially make a huge run in the East. The only question is, will they make a run? Welcome to Just the Facts Hoops. My name is Jimmy. And before we continue, make sure to engage in this video for me. If you're watching this right now, please comment something down below, as well as like the video. It takes just a couple seconds and it'll do a lot for me moving forward. But without further ado, let's get to this video. The Boston Celtics are currently one of the more impressive teams in the league this season, and quite possibly the most impressive team since the New Year's, having a 35-12 record since the calendar turned to 2022. Now, the first thing we must ask is what went into this turnaround for the Celtics, who were 23-24 in late January. The first thing me and many others contribute their hot streak on is Jaylen Brown's tweet back in late January. I'm halfway joking about that one, but when he tweeted about the energy shift, he was right. You saw it on the court. Over the last 2 months or so, they've not only been the number one team in terms of offensive efficiency, but they've been number one in defensive efficiency as well. That led to the team having 3 of their 5 starters in serious contention for Defensive Player of the Year: Marcus Smart, Jayson Tatum, and Robert Williams, before he got injured, of course. And more on him in a minute. But that doesn't go without saying that Brown and Horford are by no stretch weak links defensively. Call me crazy in a way, but Marcus Smart has been the Draymond Green of the Boston Celtics over the years. No, he's not as good as Draymond, but the way in which he impacts the culture and structure of the team can be attributed to Smart's play and attitude. You can say whatever you want about the Celtics over the years and how they've relatively underachieved, but you rarely ever looked at a Celtics team and them not playing solid team defense, and that's attributed to Marcus Smart. The tough on-ball defense, the overall communication, the intensity, diving for loose balls, although sometimes recklessly, and taking charges frequently are those things you need from a guy if you want to have any type of championship aspirations. Brown and Tatum have took on that style of play on that end of the floor, combining that with their length, size, and athleticism. Robert Williams was great for them when he was healthy, being an anchor down low, as well as being able to cover in space and cover ground faster than most big men. The thing about Robert is that he's never had issues being a rim protector and an overall good defender. The problem was he couldn't play as many minutes because he wasn't as disciplined as he is now. He's not jumping for everything anymore. He's contesting without fouling, knowing when to pick his spots on when to be more aggressive and physical. This year, he's basically averaging the same amount of fouls per game as he did last season and 10 more minutes played this year. He's staying out of foul trouble, which means he's on the floor longer. And in fact, Williams is the only player in the NBA this season that has held his opponents under 40% from the field with a minimum of 500 attempts. And in the 5 games prior to his injury, he was 22 of 26 from the field, which comes out to 84%, to go along with 12 blocks and 42 rebounds with a plus-minus in every single game. And oh yeah, the Celtics went 5-0 in those games. There are reports that he might return for the playoffs, and they'll need every ounce of his production, because if they don't, I'm not saying their defense would fall off a cliff or anything, but I don't think they would be as scary on that side of the ball. And even offensively, he makes a big impact. Ime Udoka deserves some serious Coach of the Year honors for constructing this turnaround on the defensive end. Not to mention the other guys on the roster like Al Horford, Grant Williams, Derek White, who are already pretty good defenders, but their skills have been enhanced under this system, it seems like. Offensively, the Celtics have also had a turnaround as well. Earlier this year, and the past few seasons for that matter, the Celtics offense has had their fair share of rough patches, and I think that has a lot to do with the stale, stagnant habits those guys, especially Brown and Tatum, would put onto display. The increased levels of iso ball, the his turn, my turn philosophy, and the questionable shot selection plagued this team and those guys for years. That was even the case earlier this season until Marcus Smart pretty much called out Tatum and Brown publicly, echoing pretty much those same sentiments I just mentioned. This season, they rank 14th in the league in assists as a team, which still might not seem very good, but considering in both of the past 2 seasons, the Celtics ranked 25th in assists, it's safe to say that they're moving in the right direction in that department. That stemmed from the 2 J's, taking what the defense is giving them and not forcing shots they probably would have in the past, as they both have hit career highs in total assists this season. Marcus Smart has also played a huge role in all this as well. He has become one of the most underrated playmakers in the league for a couple years now, in my opinion. No, it's not the most crisp or flashy as CP3, Trae Young, and other guys like that, but he does a very good job of setting up his teammates for good looks. Smart is honestly one of the best leaders in the game right now. Does that come with his fair share of bad shot selection at times? Yes. Does that come with his random 10 3-pointer attempts a game? Yes, it does. But it's not as bad as it was in the past 2 seasons or so. Another thing that's helped the Celtics turn around offensively is the fact that Brown and Tatum are willing to attack the basket more, which obviously leads to more free throws for them. They're both averaging career highs in free throw attempts this year as well. In the past, those guys, and especially Tatum, would get too shot happy, settling for very, very tough mid-range jumpers or even settling for threes. And yes, Tatum can make those shots, but sometimes it turns into a bad habit, and when those shots aren't falling, you're just bailing out the defense in a way, and you're leaving all the other guys out of rhythm as well. Ime Udoka has done a great job of also throwing into variety the offense as well. Things like making Jayson Tatum a screener to throw the defense off and to get him and other teammates easier looks. In the playoffs, that will come in handy, as obviously defenses will key in more on the 2 J's, and that's when the other guys will have to step it up. Smart will have to continue making right decisions as a playmaker. Hopefully Grant Williams can continue to hit his corner threes. Derek White has been a huge spark for them off the bench coming from San Antonio. He fits in beautifully offensively and defensively, as a guy who can create for himself a little bit as well as play off the ball. He's going to be a solid, sound defender as well. Peyton Pritchard is also a very good shooter and playmaker for them. Al Horford and Daniel Tice will continue to provide very good, solid interior defense and occasional big man shooting threes. All that being said, my main concern with the Celtics team heading into the playoffs is scoring depth. I'm afraid that Brown and Tatum will have their fair share of iffy to not so good shooting games, and in those games is where other guys need to step up. The supporting cast has failed to do so for them over the past 2 seasons or so. Hopefully it's different this time around. I think if they had 1 to 2 more guys that could very efficiently create their own shot off the bench, I would feel a lot better about them. Also, hopefully those better playoff defenses don't turn Tatum solely into a jump shooter and forcing him into very questionable looks more often than they would like. My other concern, of course, is that after an amazing season and turnaround that they had this year, they're more than likely going to play the Brooklyn Nets in the first round of the playoffs. And yes, they would probably have to play the Nets regardless if they're going to make a deep run to the finals. Having that matchup earlier than expected, earlier than they would have hoped, does kind of change the dynamic a little bit about the outlook of this team. But with that being said, the Nets by no means aren't unstoppable or anything like that. Their supporting cast is questionable as well, although they have KD and Kyrie. But if KD and Kyrie does get it clicking with those other guys on the roster, it's going to be very hard for any team to beat them, let alone the Celtics. Either way, it would be a great series, and I'm excited to see how things do play out. I think an Eastern Conference Finals appearance would be their ceiling, if anything. Are they better than the Nets overall as a team? Probably, just because they have an identity, but obviously with KD and Kyrie, they can win a series against anybody. I don't think the Celtics are better than the Bucks. Do I think the Celtics are better than the Heat? That's up for debate as well. Are they better than Philly? Philly gets it going, and if Harden gets it going, I would say Philly would be better than Boston. So, we'll see. It's going to be a tough Eastern Conference. But y'all let me know how y'all feel about the Celtics turnaround as a whole. What do you contribute the biggest factor to the turnaround being? But other than that, this is Jimmy from Just the Facts Hoops, and I'm signing out. Peace.